And we're back. You heard the whistle. And of course, he is back again. That's what time it means. It is a fantasy football update normally, but in this case, it's going to be a football game preview with the Super Bowl coming right. Well, I can't say that. With the big game coming right around the corner, because I don't want, Roger Goodell slapping a fine on me. No. Can't afford that. But I'll tell you what. He is here from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. You got to check out his podcast during the course of the football season. It's my good friend, Tyler Baker. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, Gerald. It's so good to be with you guys again, man. Love your show. Love being on it.
Well, you're a welcome part of the team, my friend. And I'll tell you what, it's always great to have you on. We know we took kind of like a week off so that you could just gear up and you could get all the info in, as you always do when you prepare for fantasy football, but this time to prepare for the big game it comes to the matchup between the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles. But before we do that, I know as a Redskins fan that you are,
yeah,
I think you want to talk a little bit real quickly about Alex Smith, quarterback for the once Kansas City Chiefs, being traded to your team.
Yes.
The team that you follow. I say it's your team.
They are my team.
Own it. Yeah, you don't have the $2 billion to own it quite yet. But the Washington Redskins, he was traded to there, which means that Kirk Cousins is out the door going as a free agent. So I ask you, at this point in time, from a Washington Redskins fan's perspective, who do you prefer at this point in time as the best foot forward for the franchise? Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith?
That's a very good question, and I mulled over that. When the news hit, I was trying to watch the State of the Union address, and I got bombarded. I had no idea what was going on, and I got bombarded with text messages and phone calls because the news hit right when that speech was happening. And I asked myself that same question. Out of the two guys, who would you prefer? Honestly, Alex Smith. I know it sounds outrageous, but I would actually rather have an Alex Smith at the quarterback position for the Washington Redskins. And the main reason is I've watched Kirk Cousins very closely over the last couple of years, and he definitely has been progressing. He's a good quarterback, but he still has points in games where it seems like the gravity of the moment just escapes him, or maybe call it a brain fart or whatever you want to call it. But it seems like sometimes he just kind of loses concentration at very critical moments in games. And that is something as a Redskins fan, you can't ignore. And Alex Smith, I think, can come in. For one, Alex Smith is a lot cheaper. Now, he's got a couple years on Kirk Cousins, and I would have not been disappointed if we would have locked up Kirk Cousins for a very long time because he's still a young quarterback. He's still improving. But for the right here and right now, Kirk Cousins is going to be the highest paid player in the NFL next year. And I'm afraid as a Redskins fan, what it would take from the rest of the team to keep him there. We got Alex Smith. Pretty reasonable deal. We have him for 4 more years. He's a veteran. He's been playing really good football. I think Alex Smith actually had a better year last year than Kirk Cousins did. Now, there were some circumstances around that, but I was happy to hear about the trade. But that leads to the big question, and that's who's going to get Kirk Cousins, because somebody's going to get him. And if I had to place a bet, I would say you're probably going to see Kirk Cousins in a Denver Broncos uniform next year, because that's a team that has excellent receivers. They have an excellent defense. They could use a little help in the running game, but it's really at the quarterback position, which has been hamstringing that team. And looking at their cap space, I think they have about $24 million, which is what they're going to have to pay Kirk Cousins next year, probably a little bit more than that. But there's always things that you can do to create cap space. And I know even Von Miller said that he wants Kirk Cousins, and Von Miller's getting paid quarterback money. And I think he's the type of guy who would do a little bit of a restructuring and to get him in there. So I think the front runner is certainly the Denver Broncos. The Jets have a lot of cap space, but Kirk Cousins has said that he wants to win. So I think if it comes down to a couple million, just a couple million, right? A couple million, or playing with a team that is ready and built to win now, I think it's definitely the Denver Broncos.
Well, that's definitely where the rumors have had him pointing the past couple of days. So definitely that would be a great acquisition for the Denver Broncos. And as we've always talked about Alex Smith, he is always the safe and steady option in regards to his passing game. He doesn't commit too many turnovers, doesn't make that many mistakes.
Yep.
And for at least the short term, it seems to be a wise investment for the Washington Redskins.
It does, because wouldn't you love to draft a young guy and have him sit behind Alex Smith for a couple years? I know I would. Alex Smith has played in a couple systems. He's had success in a couple systems. And you're right, he doesn't make mistakes. And going into this season, everybody was saying, oh, you know, Mahomes is going to get in there because Smith can't throw the long ball. Actually, he can. That's just that, you know, that's not what they've asked him to do in the past. But this year, he was airing it out. And so, as a Redskins fan, of course, I want to be super optimistic. But just as an analyst and someone who you know is looking at it objectively, I think he's going to be a very, very steadying force for the Redskins. And depending on what they do with the wideouts situation, I think it's going to determine the course of that offense next year. But I'll tell you, even right now, looking at fantasy football next year, I like Jamison Crowder.
Definitely, that's a great option indeed, and that's a great sneak peek into what's happening later this year in fantasy football indeed. Well, again, we've got Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast right here with us. It's going to be a great weekend this weekend in the NFL, because the big game, Super Bowl, is actually coming right around the corner. And there's going to be a great matchup coming up with New England and also Philadelphia. Yeah. So I ask you, what key points are you looking at in regards to the Super Bowl this Sunday?
Well, there's a definite underdog here. You have a Philadelphia team who is going into the Super Bowl with a different quarterback that got them to the Super Bowl. And you also have to weigh in the experience. There are a lot of New England Patriots players that have been to this game, have played under this type of pressure. And I think there's a total of 6 or 7 Super Bowl games within games of experience in the Super Bowl in the entire Philadelphia team. And New England's been there. They've been there a lot. So they know how to prepare for this type of game. But these are two really good teams. I did read today that there's kind of an illness going around the Eagles locker room. Several players, including Doug Peterson, are sick. But they're describing it as a cold. It could be the flu. I don't know. It could be a conspiracy. We'll see. But this, in my opinion, it is a David versus Goliath. Not to say that the Patriots are so much better than the Eagles are, but there's a very large amount of pressure that comes. You have 2 weeks off, 2 weeks to prepare. You have the media all over you, and it's what you work your entire career for. There's a lot of pressure. The New England Patriots have been here. They understand how to deal with that pressure, and we'll see if Philadelphia can figure it out.
Well, definitely will indeed. Although with very good wideouts, a nice trio of running backs to lean on, and Nick Foles playing almost at the level he was when he was throwing 27 touchdowns against 2 interceptions that one magical year he had. It could be a very, very good game for Philadelphia. I might actually be picking them, here in a sec, but while I contemplate that, let me hear your thoughts, your final prediction on who is going to win this weekend's big game, aka the Super Bowl.
Well, if I was doing the point spread, New England's favored by 4. I would assume it's probably going to be a little bit bigger than that. I think New England is is going to take it, and I think it's going to be more than 4 points. But you do raise a very good point in that there are a lot of ways that Philadelphia can attack you, and especially with that three-headed monster in the backfield. So, but that tells me that it's going to come down to coaching. And if you're asking me who can outcoach who, Belichick or Peterson, I'm going to have to go Belichick.
Well, I will say this, that it was actually a larger differential in points. I think at one time there were as many as a 9-point underdog, if I remember correctly, when it came out. But lo and behold, a lot of money has swayed, including a couple $1 million here and there on the Philadelphia Eagles, bringing it down that low. I expect it to rise to about 5 or 6 myself before kickoff. But be that as it may, I think in the long run, I'm picking an upset in this occasion.
Oh, really?
I think they are a little bit more talented than the Atlanta team that showed up last year, and we all know what the Atlanta team did in that first half, and actually should have won that game by all intents and purposes. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles, with the solid defense that they have, plus also as well the wideouts that they have and the offensive array and talent that they have overall, I think they're going to pull this one out. I think it's going to be close. Tom Brady will still provide some magic, but I think at this point in time, I think it will be about a 35-31 win for Philadelphia in this year's Super Bowl. Although I won't be surprised if Tom Brady pulls that again, of course, because nothing he does at this point surprises me at all in the least.
Sure, and you don't know how the game flow is going to go up into the fourth quarter, but if it's close in the fourth quarter, I'll take Brady.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I would definitely as well. I think anybody who's seen Tom Brady over the years has got to admit that if it's late in the game and he's got any point of chance in time to do something magical, he will usually 9 times out of 10 will do it, except for against the New York Giants, but we won't go there. But
I will say this though. I was reading earlier that Philadelphia has been really good in first quarter of games. Scoring, and New England hasn't, at least in their Super Bowl, in what they've done in Super Bowls. And if Philadelphia can come out and if they can trust Nick Foles to sling it, because he's been looking pretty good, I think and then pressure on Tom Brady, I could definitely see a scenario where Philadelphia wins this game, definitely. But I think it's going to come down to Philadelphia getting out to a fast start and taking risks and putting pressure on Brady, because you might give up a long one to Brandon Cooks, putting pressure on Brady. But if you can get to him and if you can get in his head and bang him around a little bit, then the path to beating beating the New England Patriots becomes a lot easier. So I definitely see a scenario where Philadelphia can go out there, but it's gonna require them preparing for that game, dealing with the stress and getting out there and striking first, because I don't think you just kind of trade punches and then beat the New England Patriots at the end. I don't think that's a very good game plan, but we'll see. I think it's going to be a great game.
As do I. I think it's going to be a great game as well. Again, my friend, it is just so great to have you on. As always, it is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. During the football season and even before, in your preparations for fantasy football, you got to check out his great podcast each and every week as he updates you the latest in the fantasy football scene. Tyler, as always, it's a great pleasure having you on. I know in the off time, if you get the opportunity, you're going to come back on periodically, hopefully with some good stuff outside of fantasy football and into more of stuff that you also want to talk about. So I'm looking forward to hearing you as well and having you on the show numerous times in the off season. And again, I just wish you all the best and the crew at the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast on Facebook. And I tell you what, just appreciate all your help this season and everything going forward.
It has genuinely been a pleasure to be a part of what you guys do. You guys have such a great show, and it's always a pleasure. And I certainly will be back. There's certain times in the year with where the NFL is doing stuff. I think in mid-March, the new NFL year starts. So teams are going to be releasing guys and signing guys. There's going to be a frenzy. And then we're going to have the draft after that. And then there's going to be certain pockets of free agent stuff that's going to be happening. So I will definitely come on and love to keep your listeners abreast as to what's going on, because if you're going to win your league next year, you're going to have to pay attention to all this stuff, and we're going to have to talk about this stuff and figure some things out before you go to that fantasy draft next year.
Definitely, indeed. But once again, it's Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. Tyler, as always, my friend, it's great and wonderful having you a part of the PCC multiverse.